Hi guys, this is Vishal. So in this video, I'm going to explain about asynchronous batch processing in MuleSoft 4. I'll take one real-time like scenario and try to implement it by creating MuleFlow. First, I'll build one scheduler to poll MySQL database every 15 seconds to fetch latest data. Then I'll attempt to transform records fetched from database into an XML form. And finally, I'll create files with transform XML data for each record. So let's get started. First one is based on the scenario is that we're going to build a poller. Now in order to create a poller, we have one component called scheduler. It's just a scheduler. It will schedule the job. Okay, so I'll pull this first. So this will be acting as my input endpoint. So this is a scheduler. Okay, and I will say use a fixed scheduler. Okay, there are two options. One is using cron, so you can set a cron expression and the time zone in the time zone you want to run. And second is a fixed frequency. I'll go with a fixed frequency, right? Then fixed frequency, let's time unit set to seconds and fixed frequency set to 50. Okay, that's what I wanted. Okay, so after every 15 seconds it will trigger. And second options we have start delay. What is the initial delay you want to set? You want to run immediately after the application started, or you want to wait for some time. Okay, that's actually the initial delay. Let's say I want to wait for 5 seconds initially. Okay, this is what I have for the scheduler. Okay, now second option, okay, so the second component is database related. Okay, so we want to configure the database. We want to write a select query in order to fetch the data. Okay, so that's a second one. So we have in the database we have select, right? Select operation. So I'll take this here. Now we have to configure the configurations. I am running the MySQL, so I will configure it. Okay, I'll change it to MySQL. I have MySQL driver already because I use it. Now here it's localhost 3308. That's a port. Root password is admin, and database is MuleDB. That's how. Okay, let's test the connection. I know it's right, but let's make sure. Okay, the connection is successful. All right, that's done. Now here we have to write query to fetch the data. This is going to be our query. Okay, this is a plain query. I haven't added yet on what basis I'm going to pull only latest records. Okay, so this is a very generic query. First we will write. Okay, this is my query. Now I want to pull latest records. Okay, now if you see my table carefully, product ID is incremental. Okay, and what is a max product ID? Here we have, I don't know, max will run here. Okay, we got max product ID. Okay, max product ID is 213, right? So this is a max product ID. So I'm going to poll based on this product ID. If this product ID initially I will set by default, okay, the initial when before running, even not for the ones, I'll set product ID. This is, I'll create a variable, okay, or a key you can say. I'll set it to 1. Okay, then I will run this job. Okay, that will fetch how many records? 114. That means till this much from 100. Okay, it will fetch records from 100 product ID to 213 product ID. Okay, so the max product ID, so the latest product ID I will set to 213. Okay, so the value will change here to 213. Then any records that will come with the product ID more than 213 will be fetched in the next phase, in the next cycle. Okay, in the first 15-second cycle, all 114. Then all records after in the second cycle, all records with the product ID greater than 213. So my parameter, actually what I meant to say is that my parameter which I'm going to use to poll the latest records is product ID, which is I'm going to use as a key. So object store will help you to store some keys or some essential parameters in your application for permanent basis. What does it mean on for permanent basis? That means, if let's consider, if you set any parameter, any key during your flow of application, and your application has been restarted, you shut down it and you restart it again, in that case as well, even in that case, your key will not be resetted. It will remain the same. What was the last value during the process, it will set to the same. So that means the values is stored onto the permanent memory. Okay, so it will not like restart a key. The value will not be cleared, it will remain the same. In case if you want to remove the value, in case if you want to clear the value, you have to create a different flow and to call this one clear or remove. That will help you to remove. But if you consider that if I will restart the application and will remove the keys, that will not happen. Okay, this is actually the new features has been added in Mule 4 in order to survive application restarts. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use. So first what I'm going to do is that first I will, before db, okay, before this select operation, I will retrieve one key. Okay, if we don't have a key, we can set by default value. So in order to retrieve that key, I will use this object retrieve. So I will put it before select. Okay, key is something. Okay, so this is a retrieve. Then I will use one more called store, which is after this select. Okay, so I will put this. I will explain why am I doing like this. Okay, first we will set store, then we will have retrieve. Okay, now see, we will call a select operations, right? We will call select operation, we'll get all product IDs. Okay, we'll get all product IDs. That means this is what we will get. Maximum product ID as a 213. Okay, this is actually the result. We're getting the data in this format. Okay, so the last record, this is actually array. Okay, consider this is an array. So the last record of our array, this is going to be like this. So for the last record, I can pull this product ID, right? I have an array, I will go to the last index and pull that product ID, right? I can do that. So 213 I will get. So I can store that 213 to my product ID. I'll create a key as a product ID and set that 213, so that in the next cycle it will fetch all the records which is greater than product ID 213. Okay, so I need to create that key, right? So I have to create the key. So in order to create the key, I'll use store. That means I'm going to store that key into some object store. Okay, I'm going to store that key into some permanent memory. So let's open it. Okay, first of all you have to create a configuration here, very down, object store configuration. Nothing, just create it, nothing else you need to add at this point of time. It will by default will create the object store. Now here I'll create a key. Now what is the key you want to create? What is the variable or parameter you want to create? I will say I want to create product ID. Okay, remember this parameter, this will help you. Okay, now what is the value you want to set? I don't want to set the payload, right? I want to set this value. This is my array which is I'm going to create. I want to set the product ID of my last index. Okay, last index means how do I get this value? I know the size of this array. Okay, once I load the data from the database, from the initial, at the first level it will load all the data which is present in the database. So I know the size is gonna be 114. Okay, 114. And for the array, how you define the size? 0 to 113. This is actually the array definition. So I can go to this 113 position, right? And I can pull this product ID. So how can I do it? Let's do this here. Okay, I will remove this. Okay, in order to get the size of an array, we have size of function. Okay, we have a size of function in DWL, right? We can use it. So I will get the size of payload. Okay, so the select operation will give you the payload. Okay, the data output. Okay, I will say size of payload. That means this size will give you 114. Actually, the actual size is 114. Okay, I will go to -1. Why I'm going to -1? Because array will represent like this, 0 to 113. So the size is this. So I have to get -1. That is 113. That means I have reached to this level, right? So this is 114. Now this is payload is nothing but the array. Now in order to retrieve any element from payload, we have to go to that index. So this is actually index. Okay, so I will take this off. So I want to, this is how we can get the data from payload. Okay, so this payload is actually an array. So in order to extract any element from particular index from an array is this, the syntax is this. So here becomes any value. This is the index. Okay, and this is our index. Getting? This is payload. What I'm saying that I'm trying to extract value from my array at this index, right? Now, I don't want to extract entire value. Okay, I want to extract only product ID. So if you type dot after this, it will give you what object you want to pull. So I will say product ID. We created a key with the latest value, but before that, what do you want to set? I'm going to retrieve that value first. So for the first level, when we run the scheduler for the first time, we don't have that product key set, right? So I have to give some default value to it. So if I open this retrieve key, I will say try to extract this product ID key. If you don't get any value, set it default to 1. You can set it anything, okay, but I'm setting it to 1. You have to give a object store configuration from which object store you want to extract it. Okay, the one we created earlier, from there. Okay, first of all, in the first cycle, you won't get this product ID. So by default, it will set this value to 1. So once it execute in the first cycle, the product ID key is at this level will be set to 213. In the next set, it will extract this value, that is 213. Okay, and then it will use that value. Now so far we just set that value and extracted that value, but we haven't used that value in select operation. Okay, so I will use it. Now how can I use it? Now this is just a key. Okay, this is not a variable or some sort of thing. It's just a key and it will give you a value. Now if you go to the advanced, this is the enricher. Okay, message enricher. You can create a variable here to like you're saying that extract that value from your object store and put it in one target variable. I will give the target variable name over here. I'll say product ID is my target variable. Okay, so I'll give something like this, or I'll give something like product var. Okay, this is my target variable, product ID var. Okay. Let's give some meaningful. This is my target variable. So whatever the data, okay, the key extracted from the object store will be stored in this product ID var. So now I can use this product ID var in my select operations. So what I will do is that I'll say, let's write a query over here. I will say where product ID, okay, product ID is greater than the value. Okay, so this is my select query. I'm going to take this, put it over here. Now you have to mention the variable. Okay, now input parameters will be added over here. Here you have to add a placeholder. So I'll say product underscore ID. This is the placeholder. Okay, let's write it in capital so that there wouldn't be much. Product ID. So this is a placeholder. Now you have to set a value to this placeholder, right? So you will set it over here. I will create like this. This is like a DWL expression, right? So you will set this value like this. You have set this, you have created a variable that is product var. Okay, we'll set it over there. We created a product ID that is a placeholder and we're using it over here. Okay, now this is done. We created a variable, we are trying to pull the data, the latest one. Okay, and then we created a store to hold the new one. Now this product ID, this select query will give the data, that is array of object, and from the array of object we extracted the latest product ID that we have stored again into the key. So when in the next cycle comes, it will not repeat the same data to load again. Okay, so there won't be a poisonous data in your application. This is about your poller. Okay, now maybe you can place a logger and try to check this first. Okay, you can say it like you can just set, we'll set the size of it. We just log it, what is the size of payload, so every time how much size we are getting. All right, okay, now this is first to retrieve and store. Okay, now we'll try to run it. Okay, got deployed. Now it will start polling the data. We got initial delay of 5 seconds. It will start polling. Okay, hit the data. We got the size of payload 114. Okay, next time it tried to create the variable, but it is failed. Null value has been provided, so please provide a non-null value or fail on null value. So there is a property when you retrieve, if it is null it will fail. Okay, so you can set to say that fail on null. Okay, if you get the null value, don't fail, just set it to false. Okay, so what we can do is that we just open it. Okay, here if you go down, where it is, it's again, it's in a store variable. Here we have fail on null. In case if you get the null, don't fail it. So I will set to false. Save it. If I go down here, it will not fail anymore. So the first, now it is, see, first time we got the 100 and the next time we got only 0 records because we don't have any data. It's trying to pull the data for the next records. So maybe we can try to add data. Okay, so this is the first step. The first 2 steps we have created. We created a poller and we are trying to poll the data on the latest side. Okay, again what we can do is, now I will shut it down. Now we will move next. The next is this. We got this much done, right? Fetching the data. Now we will add a batch object or batch scope to transform each record from that array to XML and then put it in a different file. Okay, that means there are 114 records at this point of time. That means they're going to be 114 XML files. XML request file will be created. Okay, now after this, over here I'll add this batch shop object here. Okay, I will add one more batch step, not just one. I'll add one more, and the logger. Okay, I'll add one logger in on complete phase. Okay, here you can say payload. Okay, the on complete phase will have a batch result object. So if I go to here, these many parameters you will have in a batch result object. Okay, elapsed times, failed record on phase, how many records has been failed, how many records has been loaded, how many records has been processed. Okay, we will print process records. Okay, I'll say that records process. Like this. Okay, so it is giving some error saying it can be null value, so I have to default it somewhere. Default to -1. Now we will create our logic over here. First is we are going to transform. Now this batch step runs on each record. Till this it's array of payload. Once you enter into the batch scope, it is each record. Okay, the payload has been serialized and for each record the batch job runs. Okay, Now we will use first transform. We will divide our logic into two batch steps. The transform will be into the first batch step. Creating the file for each record will be in a second batch step. Okay. Now I will use a transform message. Transform message is again the simple. Now we added a transform message component. Now we will transform our payload into the XML form. So I want it like this. Okay, I'm not doing something fancy type of things, so maybe I can add a define a metadata. Okay, I'll create add to define metadata. This is a metadata we have. Okay, this is an XML request. Now product name has been mapped to product name. Product ID has been mapped to product ID. Product type is mapped to product type. Price is mapped to product price. Company name is somewhere product company name, and last company location. Okay, since we map this, that means the transformation has been done. This transform will convert the Java object into XML. Now the next step is I want to create a file from that XML. Okay, this is the XML data we got. I want to load it into the file. I will create a separate file. Now what would be the name of that file? I want to name that file against product ID. So in order to store product ID, I will create a variable in my batch scope, because each record, because in a batch scope you will get one record at a time. So for a one record you know the product ID, right? So this is a one record. You know the product ID. You have the product ID variable, so you can use it. So I will set variable, or maybe instead of creating a variable over here, I can use this one. I can add a new target, right? Here instead of attributes I will say variable. I will create a variable product ID var. Now this is not a simple flow variable. Since you're creating within a batch scope, this is a record variable. Okay, in line. Okay, that's it. I'll create here. I don't want this much. I want to just add payload dot product ID, right? So instead of using the set variable the conventional way, you can also create a variable in the transform message. Okay, so transform can be used in a two way. You can have your own transformation, along with you can create a variable over here. So two things I'm doing in the one single transform message component. Done, right? Now you can log the product ID in case if you want. Okay, which product ID you're processing at this point of time, so you can log it. Yeah, you can add it. I'll say record product ID. I'll say let's say record with product ID. Okay, and then I will say vars dot, we got this. Okay, this is the recent one we get. This is the second product ID var we recently created. Just one, right? We created the same. Let me get the name. Yes, product ID var. This is the name. Okay, product ID var I have to default in case if it is 4. Okay. Okay, let's take this somewhere here so that you can read it. Okay, this is going to be a message in my logger. Record with the product ID. This is my product ID. Again, I will append string is processing. Okay, this is my logger message. Okay, I'll take and copy it over here. I'll remove this all. I'll add this. Okay. You can check from here also. You can just go to the big option. Here you can see this. What is the record you're seeing? Now, this is about transformation. Now we have to write into the file. Each record we're going to write into the file. So into the second batch strip here I will create a file. So I will use file object. Okay, we have a file write object, right? Write connector. Here connector configuration within a for file component is not mandatory. Okay, if you want to add you can, if you don't want to create a connector configuration it's fine. Okay, now path is important. This is the path. Okay, now here I'm going to create a file. Okay, now what should be the file name? So this is going to be a file name like this, product. Okay, underscore, this is the first, and then where's product id. Okay, because we got the product id created, right? And then xml. So I will use this much. Okay, and then we will create add rest in our code. Here in the path I will enable this expression mode. I'll go to this big graphical view. Here we will create the file. Okay, now here I'll say this is my path. Okay, this is where I want to create the file. Oh, backward slash append. Okay, what do you want to append? Before this I want to append. Okay, here I will append the file name. Okay, my file name should start with like this. Product underscore. Okay, and then my product id. Okay, vars dot vars dot. Okay, something wrong. I'm not doing it correctly. Why is not taking it? Okay, let's add this again here. Instead of creating different, I will add like this product underscore, and here I'll say this. Now this is correct. Okay, this product id var is nothing but my product id which I got it created at this place, right? I'm going to use product id because the record has been processed individually, right? Although parallelly the records will be processed individual, so that records will have product id for each one, right? Okay, so against the each product id I'm going to create an xml. Okay, you instead of creating a file name with the product id, you can use the time frame as well. Okay, like HHMMSS, that way, like hours, minute and second. Based on that we can create a file name with that, but instead of that I'm using the product id. Now after this dot xml, because it's an xml file. Now I will mark it done. Now here payload is nothing but the data we got out of this transform message. Now these batch steps run sequentially. Okay, even though even though for each records run parallelly, but these batch steps run one by one. After one first batch step, second batch step will run. Okay, so I will save this. Okay, nothing else you want to write. It's just write mode. You want to create, you just want to overwrite the existing file or create a new one. I will say create new one every time because product id is different, right? Now create parent directory. I will set it will create a parent directory if you don't have it, but generally on the server we already get it created, okay, in the real time. So maybe you can set it to false. You don't need to create a parent directory, just create a file, right? That's it. We got the flow created, we added batch steps, okay, we transformed the message at this place, okay, and then we wrote the file. Eventually you can write a logger here. Okay, I will say I will take this record, I will take this message, I will just modify it over here. Okay, record with id, file with product ID. I'll say like this, file with product ID is created. Okay, this is my message, so I will add it over here. That's it. Okay, thing is, we have wrapped this transform write component into the batch scope. That will just parallelize the operation. Rest, the function perspective, it will remain the same. Now the result of what this operation, when I run this flow, output is the result that we will pull the data for the first time. Okay, assume that we don't have any key set, so we will put entire data. Okay, then we will pass the data to the batch scope. Batch scope will serialize the data, and for each record it will run parallelly. Okay, based on the number of threads it will create. Then for each record it will transform the message. Right, this is our transformation. Also, we are creating one variable to hold the product ID. This will help you to create a file name, right? Then we are logging that this particular record is processing. This is for logging purpose. Then in the second batch step, we are creating a file at this location, right? Now it's giving an error. Let's see why. Okay, let's take this here. Maybe it's giving for some reason. Okay, I have to default this. Again, there's a problem with the defaulting. I have to default it to something 999, which is not present. And I'll take this value and add new one. Okay, I will create a file at this location, and this is the data payload that is the transform data. And eventually I have a logger. I'm saying how many records I have processed. For the first time, I will the number of records I will process is 114. So that's the number of records we have. Okay. So we will run it, and before because since the initial delay I will set it to 10 seconds, so that I will get a time to remove the key, so that for the first time it will process all the records, right? But anyways, we said that what we set this value to divide by 10, so we will have enough records, so we don't need to do this. But anyways, now we will run this. Okay, I will just simply go and run. Okay, got it deployed. I will clear the logs so that the new logs will start printing. It will take initial 15 seconds of that, so meanwhile I can take this. Now it has started. Even before that it has executed this. Okay, so if I go to the logger, now see, it has been processing. Now it has created some cannot write path because it has been executing before even we run. It has been executing the data again and again. Okay, so maybe what we can do is that I will shut it down and try to run again. So anyways, it has created the files. Okay, but let's delete this. Okay, and let's set this to the real value. Okay, I'm not going to use this divide by 10 or something. I will set properly. Okay, payload -1, and I'll set this here as well, so that at the first time it will create 114 files. Now it has created the files. Okay, the next time, if you see, next time whenever it tries to hit the date table, it has created, initially it has processed 114 records. So if you go and check the logs, these many files has been created. File with the product ID has been created. Now when it goes for the next cycle, right, it doesn't have any data. Records is 0. We don't have any data. So in case if I insert any value, I'm trying to insert 1. Okay, let's insert 1. Okay, test. Two 1 4, that's 1. Okay, we will insert 1 data, some dummy data. I don't want anything else. Okay, now I will clear it. We have 0 records. Now there is a delay of 15 seconds, so we will run this. What happened? Okay, first row is created. Now if I go here, now here you can see this record has been processed. 214, this is the ID we added. 214 has been processing and 214 file has been created, right? So if I go to my path, I should see 115. That means initial 114 files, and then we have 214 files, right? So if I open this file, right, see, this is the data I added, right? So if you open any file based on that record ID, product ID, you will get the data for that particular product ID. So this way we can, this is one example of using the batch processing in MuleSoft to construct the batch job, which you can set based on the cron expression, because in the normal in the real-time application we don't go with the non-fixed frequency, we go with the cron expressions, right? So we can schedule a job and all the operations, fetching the data, writing into the file, creating the files, putting into the different applications, or requesting a different application, can be done in a single flow.